Just as Dr. Adeshina mentioned a few moments ago, we'd like to use this opportunity to welcome to the podium a friend of Africa and a friend of the African Development Bank, His Excellency Dr. Mohammed Al-Jazer, President of the Islamic Development Bank, to give his keynote address.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Your Excellency, President William Ruto, the President of the Republic of Kenya, Your Excellencies, Heads of State, Your Excellency, my dear brother and friend, Dr. Adesina, President of the African Development Bank Group, the honorable heads of international and regional institutions, honorable ministers, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed an honor to be part of this special gathering to celebrate the African Development Bank Group's 60 years of remarkable contributions to Africa's development journey. I am delighted to address such a distinguished audience today to share my thoughts on Africa's transformation, the African Development Bank Group, and the reform of the global financial architecture. Let me also take this opportunity to highlight the exceptional value we at the Islamic Development Bank place on our strategic partnership with the African Development Bank Group. It is a commitment to a shared dream of transforming the African continent and helping it deliver on its hopes and aspirations. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Africa, a continent full of promise and endowed with abundant resources. Africa, a continent that holds the dreams and aspirations of hundreds of millions of its people. Africa, a continent full of potential, yet grappling with critical challenges on its road to structural transformation. Since the turn of the century, many African countries have exhibited strong economic growth. A significant portion of this growth is the result of better macroeconomic management, higher investment and trade, larger regional markets, and to a lesser extent, some degree of structural transformation. Despite this progress, the core components of human development, including income levels and formal employment, remain low and vulnerable to shocks. This leads me to the key question that the region and its governments need to tackle in the coming years. What will it take to ensure that this higher growth is sustainable and inclusive? To foster and sustain development gains, economic growth alone is insufficient. African countries need to deepen their structural transformation to ensure a prosperous and secure future for all Africans. The priority will be on transforming natural resource-driven economies into knowledge-driven ones, while taking advantage of the region's demographic dividend. Reforms ought to focus on fostering a more conducive business environment to enhance competitiveness and encourage initiatives that take advantage of regional growth opportunities. In this regard, the African Continental Free Trade Area offers a huge potential for building regional supply chains, developing intra-African production networks in manufactured goods, and enhancing competitiveness. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Africa is on the ascent. and I am optimistic about its development prospects. However, recent estimates suggest that Africa will require an additional $200 billion annually to achieve the SDGs by 2030. Moreover, it is becoming increasingly evident that the current global financial system will not be able to provide the necessary support to achieve the ambitious transformative agenda of Africa. It is thus not surprising that there are calls for a rethink of this framework to make it more efficient and just, giving a greater voice to the global South. Additionally, significant resources are being diverted to debt servicing at the expense of critical investments in health and education. This situation clearly demands urgent reform. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, over the past 5 decades, the Islamic Development Bank Group has remained steadfast in its commitment to Africa's socio-economic development. By the end of 2023, our financing to Africa totaled approximately $74 billion, including $45 billion specifically dedicated to enhancing trade. Our efforts have been significantly strengthened through long-standing cooperation with development partners, including the African Development Bank. Between 2017 and 2023, we achieved the record co-financing volume of $2.9 billion with the African Development Bank, enabling us to co-finance 22 operations across diverse sectors, and some of them have been mentioned by my brother, Mr. Adesina. I am pleased to announce that during the Islamic Development Bank's Golden Jubilee celebrations in Riyadh last month, we further enhanced our partnership with the African Development Bank by expanding its scope and setting a higher co-financing target over the next 5 years. In this quest, where collaboration is paramount for success, the role of the Arab Coordination Group, or the ACG, in fostering development and progress across the African continent cannot be underestimated. To this end, the ACG has been a long-standing supporter of African countries and has cumulatively invested over $220 billion in the region to date. Bolstering its support for African partner countries, in November 2023, the ACG pledged a $50 billion financing envelope over the next 7 years to help build resilient infrastructure and inclusive societies in the African continent. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we share common dreams for Africa, a continent free of poverty where no one is left behind, a continent of hope and prosperity driven by innovation and entrepreneurship, a continent providing meaningful employment opportunities for its youth. We remain steadfast in our commitment to work with our development partners to rekindle hope, to realize Africa's dreams of transformation, especially when we recall the wise words of our host, His Excellency President Ruto, and I hope he doesn't mind me quoting him, who said recently, only very recently, that Africa is neither facing east or west, but is facing forward. I wish you all successful deliberations throughout the remainder of this dialogue. I look forward to the positive impact these discussions will have on shaping our strategies and actions to mobilize affordable financing for Africa's inclusive growth and structural transformation. Thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.